All right, got the engine off. It was a little heavier than I expected, that's for sure. And I woke up having slept wrong somehow and had a horrible kink in my neck all day. And I really struggled to lift that thing off without hurting my neck worse. We'll see how I feel tomorrow morning. But yeah, it's definitely a lift with your legs type affair. Felt like it weighed more than what you would think an ultralight airplane engine should weigh. But there we go, it's off the airplane. Just looks sad. Hopefully we'll get the airplane, the engine on there freshly rebuilt soon, and hopefully for not too much money. We'll see about that. All right, there the engine is in the back of my Jeep. And there it will stay until I drive up to Merrill, Wisconsin tomorrow and hand it off to Steve Krueger. And hopefully we find something out. All right, I'm up here in Merrill, Wisconsin at Steve Krueger's. He's got his Mini Max, which is also 447 Rotax powered. Rans S7, Rans S6. Nice little hangar up here. All right, everybody, Mark here, and I'm back home in my basement. Steve Krueger, super nice guy. Turned out he actually is really good friends with the guy who built my Hawk. Steve has even flown it, and he did a little bit of top-end decarboning work on the engine, this engine, before. In fact, we were going through the engine together, and he was saying, yeah, oh, that's my handwriting there on the heads, and things like that. So Steve Krueger up in Merrill, Wisconsin, super interesting and super nice guy. Started back in the early 80s with a Rotax Rally that he bought when he was 16 years old, and has been flying ever since. And he offers instruction in two-place Quicksilver, and owns a Mini Max and all sorts of stuff. So here he sent me home with some homework while things get worked on in terms of the cylinders. So here I've got my engine cooling shroud off of the Rotax 447, and I'm giving it a little cleanup, a little Scotch-Brite and sanding, and I'm painting it. I just did a coat on the inside, and then I'll spend a little more care and attention on the outside. The inside will rust again, and it's just that's just natural with the heat. And then I've got my engine case here, and I'm just getting it cleaned up. You can see here the top half of the case. There's still some old oil in there, and there's some of that red anaerobic sealant in there. So I'm just taking some automotive sealant. I actually don't have carb cleaner, I'm out of it, but he said that electronics cleaner is just fine, and it does seem to be working well. I'm just using one of my son's old t-shirts from when he was much smaller, and getting stuff out carefully with my fingernails and such. I do have a scraper here, and I'm basically just wrapping the end of it in the old shirt and getting some of the buildup of oil out of some of the nooks and crannies. But again, very careful. This is an aluminum case, and of course I don't want to scratch it. I would love to use my wife's Pampered Chef scraper, but I'm afraid that might be detrimental to my health. I'm going to get in here probably with a Q-tip and get like this dowel pinhole that still has some oil in it, and some of the anaerobic sealant out of some of the head stud holes, and you can see here just some old oil and grease at the I believe this is the flywheel end of the engine. So just will be cleaning that up overall. Overall, it's very clean. Doesn't really need any work, and this should be an easy job. So I'll be doing this tonight. The cylinders are getting, do have to get honed, do have to get bored, and then they'll be honed. And then he was able to get new pistons from Ski-Doo, and of course a new Rotax crankshaft, which we had at Steve's shop already when I got there with the engine on Saturday. And we mic'd it, did a run-out test on either end of the shaft per the Rotax instructions, and the crank checked out okay. Of course, that's a three-piece fit-together crank, pressed-together crank that includes the connecting rods. You can't get the connecting rods off the crankshaft without taking the crank apart. So we never do that. The crank just gets replaced, and Rotax wants it back. There's a $200 core charge on it because they want to destroy it. They don't want any cranks out there in circulation that might be used. Now, he did say you can get cranks. That crank was about $1,275 from Leaf. He did say that you can get a Ski-Doo crank for about $400, and it will fit, but you know, it's not quite controlled to the same exacting standards that Rotax does for aircraft crankshafts, and it also doesn't have the hole on the crankshaft where the pulse line comes out of the case. And that hole is very important because that's how you can use gear pullers and wrenches and have the crank stay stationary. You put a tool in there, and then you can wrench on the PTO end or the flywheel end of the engine, and it stays put. So without that, taking the engine apart again later, and maybe even assembly, we'll find out, would be certainly more difficult. But more importantly, I'd rather spend the money on the crankshaft that was made for this specific application for use in aircraft. So maybe we'll be able to do a little filming when I next meet up with Steve to put the engine back together. He is going to let me go through it with him and teach him all of his tips and tricks. And that's just what I love about aviation, and people like Steve and Greg Klemp and others that are willing to share, and even if that means I can do my own overhaul next time and I don't have to pay him to do it. So gotta love it. Just great people in aviation. Hope you can hear me okay with the air conditioner on and the water heater running down here. But anyway, that's kind of it for tonight. Oh, I also have some other parts here getting painted. There's my right-hand axle just getting repainted. There is the cross tube for the gear, which I stripped the paint off of and just putting a fresh coat of paint on it. Here is my nose gear steering arm, and it's not really focusing. There we go. My nose gear steering arm for you Hawk guys. It is part number HC7R. HC7R. And the rest of it is just my dirty, junky basement from the home remodel project that we still have going on, where I built my wife a new kitchen, and then after the airplane's fixed, I'll get back on to the project of finishing the remodel of the downstairs bathroom. All of those projects, of course, helped me win brownie points so that I could go buy my Hawk. So good stuff there. All right, everyone, that's it for tonight, and hopefully you'll be hearing from me again soon. It's probably going to be another week and a half or so before Steve and I get back together, but I think I am going to get to the airport a little bit this weekend, and I'll try to do a little bit of filming for you. I definitely am going to cut the fuel filter in half. After talking to Steve, he said I shouldn't have to blow as hard as it sounds like I did to get air through it, and he said that those types of filters that I have are typically paper filter elements, and they just disintegrate over time if they're not replaced. Everything else in the engine looked so good, other than just a little bit of scuffing on the pistons and a little bit of scoring in the cylinders, but nothing that indicated a seizure of any kind. so the spark plugs look good, and ignition and everything. So he's thinking that fuel filter is a really strong suspect. So I'll be cutting that apart next time I get to the airport, and I'll definitely be firing up the camera and show you what I find. So thanks for hawking it with Mark, and we'll talk to you again. Hey everybody, Mark back here again. I just want to show you something really interesting that Steve Krueger had pointed out to me. And for people that know these engines well, they, like Steve, they believe this, that the upright installations of these two-stroke engines, in this case the 447, are really better than the inverted installations. Now I know there are a lot of aircraft out there, even some Hawks with belt drives with inverted installations, but keep in mind these two-stroke engines do not have recirculating oil systems, so the oil is in the fuel. So the fuel comes in up here and into the heads and burns, and the oil does not burn, and then it drains down into the rest of the engine. So you can see here at the base of the cylinders these pockets. Now you won't see these in a four-stroke engine. These pockets have orifices. Let's see if I can get some light on it. There's one of them there. So that the oil can drain down into the bottom of the crankcase. So in an inverted engine installation, at least with this engine in particular, you're not getting the effect of gravity for this oil flowing down to the bottom of the engine and helping to lubricate the rest of the engine. So just something to think about there if you're thinking about installing a two-stroke on your ultralight and trying to decide what kind of configuration, whether to go with a gearbox or a belt drive. I would say, and from what I've learned from Steve, is that an upright installation is definitely better. Now, of course, in four-stroke engines, we worry about inverted installations for hydrolock because you don't want oil to pool in the cylinders, and you know, you try to start the engine and all of a sudden you bend a connecting rod because there's oil pooled in the cylinder. That's not so much a concern with these two-strokes. But just like any engine, you turn the prop through to make sure nothing's locked. I believe that's probably what they do with inverted two-strokes. Don't quote me on that. But anyway, just wanted to show you that, and thanks again for watching.